How long have you been a falconer?
I've been a falconer now, let's say about 28 years actually. 20 of those years have been spent here in the state of South Carolina, and then prior to that was in the state of Wyoming. And so I got a few years under my belt. But yes, I've been a falconer for about 28 years now. Hard to believe. It seems like it was just yesterday when I trapped my first passage red-tailed hawk. I named her Buster. She was one of the worst hawks ever, according to my sponsor, who was quite a bit older than I was. And he saw me struggling with that bird, and he goes, well, the good news is if you ever get that bird manned, and if you ever get that bird flying, this will probably be the worst bird you've ever had, and everything else will be easier.
So tell us, how did your falconry begin?
Falconry began for me, it was kind of the concept of, if I can't beat them, I'll join them. What I mean by that is, I used to live right on the front range of the Rocky Mountains in Wyoming, and every winter the goshawks would migrate down from the mountains into the foothills of the Rockies there and just eat me out of house and home with my pigeons. I had performing pigeons. And I got to the point in the course of the winter, I just kind of stand out in my backyard, just watch the goshawks pluck off pigeons because it was so incredibly interesting to watch. So it was basically, if I can't beat them, I'll join them. So it was between pigeons and a goat that got me into falconry. Then a couple years after that, I had some small little goat herd, and a falconer stopped by and knocked on my door one day and asked if he could buy a goat to trap a golden eagle. And I basically said, well, I have a deal for you. You can buy a goat to trap a golden eagle, but you have to introduce me to the falconry world so I can start working on getting my sponsor and working on getting prepared to take the test. So that's what got me involved in falconry. It was basically pigeons and a goat. And also my college professor, he was well known with regards to doing eagle work around the world. And he worked with artificial insemination with eagles. And so as I took classes from him in college, I learned about falconry, learned about birds of prey at a greater level as I was obtaining my degree in zoology. So you mix that all together about 30 years ago, and I got started with my falconry.
Do you see falconry more as a sport or more of a hobby?
Is falconry a sport or is falconry a hobby? Actually, I don't see falconry as really either one. A hobby is something that you pick up, you do it for a while, you have an interest, and then after a season you put it up and you do it periodically. A sport is like, I think of like fishing. Fishing is a sport. You do it like when, when bass are biting, you go fishing for bass, or, you do fishing periodically as well. Another aspect of sport is, deer season. You go hunting during deer season. You go duck hunting during duck season. But falconry, unlike a sport or a hobby, to me, falconry is a lifestyle. Falconry, it's that lifestyle. You're always thinking, who needs to be fed tomorrow? Who doesn't need to be fed? Who needs to be flown? Who needs to be trained further in hood training or in lure training or whatever? And you're always interacting, for the most part. You're interacting with your birds, even during the molt. For those that put their birds up during the molt and they let the birds molt out during that time, you're still preparing food. You're still making sure they have fresh water pans. So you really can't ever walk away completely from falconry. It's a lifestyle, and it's not really that big of a deal. Although for those that are looking at falconry, it's like, oh my gosh, that is so involved. Yes, it is involved, but it's a choice that we have decided to make.
Tell us about one of your bad days in the field doing falconry.
I think it might have been the day where I had actually one of these. I had a Harris hawk, and I had it hooded, and I was dinging around doing something with either a bell or flight jesses or something. I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I do remember what happened is the bird baited and it flew off with its hood on, and the braces were tight on the hood, so it's not like the hood was going to fall off. And it flew, and I was under the trees, and it flew up in a branch of a tree way above my level. And it was just like this panic of, oh no, now what do I do? I don't have anything to climb a tree with. I don't have a ladder or anything. I'm out here in the woods. I have a Harris hawk up in the tree with its hood on, and I'm responsible for this bird, and I really like that bird on top of that. And it's like, now what do I do? Well, I got lucky, and I heard some crackling going on, and sure enough, it was a really dead branch that Harris hawk landed on, and that branch broke. And when the branch broke, the Harris hawk set its wings, it drifted down to the ground because it couldn't see anything, and I went and I recovered my bird. Had not that branch broke, I'm not 100% sure of what I would have done, but I'm sure we would have, or I was by myself, but I'm sure I would have come up with something.
Okay then, so tell us an example of a good day in the field.
A good day in the field with falconry is this. If you have a hunting dog with you, you haven't strangled your dog, and I mean that jokingly, kind of, sort of. You have your bird with all of its feathers and no broke feathers. You're in the vehicle, and when you put your key in the ignition, it starts, and then you drive home successfully. That's a successful day in the field. You come home with your dog, your bird, and your vehicle works.
So have you ever been hurt while working with your birds of prey doing falconry?
Have I ever been hurt in falconry? Wow, that's kind of like when talking to a horse person, people that raise horses and been around horses. And of course, my father was a doctor of veterinary medicine, and he specialized in horses. In fact, my father was killed by a horse indirectly from a blood clot from a broken leg, but that's another story for another day. But what people that are around horses, it's not matter. The question isn't the matter of if you're ever going to get hurt by a horse. It's the question of when. Eventually, that horse is going to step on your foot. It's going to swing its head, and you're going to get the bridle in the face. Something's going to eventually happen. You're going to get bucked off, get kicked, whatever. Falconry is much like that. If you don't have a tough enough hide to realize that it is just, or a tough enough skin, I should say, to realize that you're handling a bird that has very sharp talons, they have beaks, they're not pets. Generally speaking, you're dealing with wild birds at some point in time, especially earlier on in your falconry. You're trapping birds from the wild. They're not friendly in any way, shape, or form. It's not a matter, are you ever going to get hurt with falconry? It's the question of when. I can tell you one, give you an example. Giving you an example of getting hurt. Here's an example. I was trapping for red-tailed hawks, and I was using a bow net situation. So anyway, the bow net went over the hawk, trapped the hawk, and I'm going up to get the hawk out of underneath the bow net. And I put my hat over the head of the owl to kind of calm it down as I'm reaching under the bow net to get control of the legs. Well, anyway, I got footed, meaning that the hawk grabbed a hold of my hand, and interwound in the toes of the talons and the toes of that red tail was the netting of the bow net. And if any of you know, when a red-tailed hawk clamps down and binds to something, it is extremely hard to get them to release that grip. Well, I'm all by myself trapping, and I'm pinned to my bow net because I'm tangled in the netting because the hawk is dug down to the bones of my hand. I kid you not, the talons just keep going until they hit bone. And you maybe can't see it in this picture, but the thickness of this finger is much thicker than my other hand because an infection got in there. My finger swelled up, And to this day, it's not normal, and that happened maybe 6, maybe even 8 years ago. So that was just one example of being in a bad situation. And you know what? I survived it. I have a battle wound. I have a battle story, among others. But the thing is I don't want to glorify, ooh, wow, I got hurt by a bird, a big bird of prey. It's just the nature of the sport. Eventually, something's going to happen and you're going to get injured. You want to really try to use caution with these birds, especially imprint birds. Can't stress enough. I had an imprint, another one of my bad imprints. I tend to not do much with imprints. Some of you out there are great at it, and bless you. You're wonderful people that can do it. I don't brag about imprinting. I don't claim. Of course, this is an imprint owl, but they're different. But I had a male imprint, poorly imprinted goshawk. Here we go back to some goshawk stories. But anyway, the bird attacked my son. He was like, I don't know, 8 years old, grabs a hold of his ear and tries tearing his ear off, basically. And that same bird attacked me. He was going to tear my ear off. And then it was like that goshawk was going to have a come to Jesus moment there. Things are going downhill pretty bad. But the fault was of the falconer. It wasn't the bird's fault. But we do have to be very careful with imprints. Of course, they don't all turn out that way. But, they don't have the fear of people. So we just got to be careful when we're dealing with these birds, no matter where they come from.
Do you feel that falconry has a future?
I think falconry is in pretty good hands, really. I don't think it's going to go extinct. I believe that there's enough sponsorship. I believe that there is enough interest in people in these unique birds of prey and want to keep them going. I do have a concern in the area, and I'm guilty myself. I don't spend as much time in the woods hunting like I used to. But with that being said, the one concern I have is I'm hoping falconry isn't taking a shift from the true roots of taking that bird, training that bird, working that bird to hunt. That is what falconry is. In fact, our falconry permit in the United States is we are expected to hunt with our birds.
Thank you for the information, Glenn. Tell us one more story for the conclusion.
One of the memories that I remember the most is earlier on in my falconry work, I did an imprint goshawk, and I didn't do it very well, and the bird was pretty crazy. And we were up in the foothills of the mountains, and we were looking for little red pine squirrels. And anyway, as we were walking through the trees, there was this cow moose walking through the trees, and my goshawk took off of my fist, flew through the trees, and grabbed a hold of that moose right on the butt. That moose started bucking and running, and goshawks flopping around. I do remember that very well. That was one of my funniest stories. Of course, I just want to say, on behalf of Falcon Quest Birds of Prey, I'm just sharing my ideas, my experiences from my aspect of falconry. Falconry is big, it's broad, it takes place in many different countries, and I want to thank you for watching this. And if there's something that you found interesting, hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. And I try to upload weekly. Sometimes I miss it. And sometimes I'll post twice a week. So thank you for your time and have a blessed day.